amplification, and advocacy. So whether it is through our Friday magazine called The Voice, the Next Her Summit, the Top 40 Under 40 Women, or today's event, which is celebrated across East Africa, we are committed to providing the content that resonates and the platforms that continue to empower you as our partners. We're not just a media house. We're an infrastructure for the journey you have to walk as we watch your success. So this year's theme, Give to Gain, is the ultimate strategy for our collective future. And I challenge each and every one of us tonight. Do not leave without knowing someone tonight. Give them your number. Give them your email. Follow up with them. Mentor them if they ask for it. Learn from them if they ask for it. Sponsor them when they're not in the room, because they could be just what you need or they need to move to the next level. But also, for Nation Media Group, give us your voice. Fraternize our platforms. Read our content. Watch our content. Because in every single thing we do, we seek to amplify your voices. Because, as Nation Media Group, we believe when we give access, we do not divide our power, we multiply it. Because the legacy of the next 5 years will not be written for those who waited for change, but those of you in this room and many other rooms who dared to make change happen. So as you continue with your dinner, let me wish you a happy International Women's Day from Geoffrey Odundo and the entire Nation Media Group team, and wish you a rest of a lovely evening. Enjoy yourselves.
Thank you so much, Monica. And for the ladies who have just joined us, welcome again to the International Women's Day celebrations. Right about now, I want to invite a colleague, an award-winning colleague, who's going to be the moderator of the next panel session. Please put your hands together for Ms. Ele. Thank you very much. The beautiful Claudia Naisabwa are looking absolutely wonderful. And many times in my career, people forget it is Michelle Ngele Odhiambo. I always have to make the disclaimer because they don't want problems at home now, do we? Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening. And thank you so much for being here on this International Women's Day. You know, many times when we talk about leadership, which is part of what we're here to talk about, we imagine it happening in boardrooms, in strategy meetings, and in long PowerPoint presentations. But when I look around today in this room, leadership looks a lot different, right? It looks like culture, it looks like heritage, like African excellence dressed extremely well. It is clear that many of you took the theme of African royalty very, very seriously. And I'd like to give us all a round of applause. Let's give ourselves a round of applause for making the room look so absolutely wonderful tonight. Thank you all for being here. As introduced, my name is Michelle Ngele Odhiambo. I wear many hats, but for today, I'm absolutely thrilled to be your moderator for the next conversation. Now, tonight's theme, and the theme of the next panel discussion, is Give to Gain. It's a theme that challenges an old idea about leadership. For decades, leadership has been seen as power over the people, right? But as things change, and most recently, the most successful leaders perhaps understand that something has changed and something is a lot different. That real influence grows by sharing power, not by hoarding it and by holding on to it. And so when you look at the world that we live in today across Africa, women are starting businesses faster than anywhere else in the world, in Africa. But according to the World Bank, women entrepreneurs in Africa, globally even, receive less than 3% of venture capital, just 3%, right? And so when you look at the numbers, the problem isn't that women aren't ambitious, not that African women aren't ambitious. The problem is access. Access to opportunities, access to capital, access to networks. And so that is where leadership comes in. Because leaders shouldn't just build companies and run companies. It is also their job to create an ecosystem where other people can succeed. And that is the basis of our conversation tonight, where we ask, does helping others win make you win bigger? And how do you do that? The women on the panel discussion we're about to have tonight represent institutions at the center of economic power in Kenya. They influence how businesses grow, how capital moves, how the financial system evolves, and who stays included as that growth continues. First on the panel tonight is EcoBank, which operates in over 30 countries and is expanding financial access for SMEs in Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as you help me in welcoming on stage Jane Jalagat, the Director of Consumer Banking at EcoBank Kenya Limited. We also have Prudential Kenya on the panel tonight, which focuses on long-term financial security as well as wealth protection. Yeah, I like saying women support each other. All right, and so from Prudential Kenya, please help me welcome Gwen Kinisu, the MD and CEO of Prudential Kenya, are looking absolutely wonderful tonight. And from a company that is innovating in SME support, in digital banking and financial inclusion in Kenya, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Masi Kaberi, the General Manager, Talent Management at NCBA Kenya. And last but not least, a representative from a company that is a leader in digital payments and fintech innovation. Please welcome Judy Waruiru, the Regional Managing Director, Network International, East Africa. Please give them all a warm round of applause. Judy, do we have Judy? Oh, there she is, ladies and gentlemen. Let's all support her as she gets on stage. Asante sana. Now, like I said, the conversation tonight surrounds the theme Give to Gain, as we look to see how leading for impact and leading for growth means. Now, before we begin the conversation, I'd like to ask each one of my panelists to really explain what the theme of today's conversation means. And I'd like to begin with you, Judy. Even as we talk about leadership and giving to gain, when you look back at your entrepreneurship journey, when has investing in others led to strengthening your own impact and success in your career?
Thank you, Michelle. I think the theme for IWD this year is quite relevant, especially I'm actually a career woman, not entrepreneur. And what we see is, as leaders, is how we mentor the young ones into career, and that's a way of giving, because you built a career, you've built experience, you've seen a lot. And then you have these young ones who are joining the workforce or want to join the workforce. So how are we giving impact into them before they join the workforce? Are we mentoring? Are we offering programs or trainings? So for me, it's around the giving and a lot of servant leadership, whereby you are giving them opportunities as well as training them and just being there as a mentor. Yeah.
Marcy, I'd like to hear from you. You know, many times we're told lighting other people's candles won't make yours go off, right? When you look back at your career, when did impacting or helping others grow strengthen your own career, perhaps?
Okay. So, giving back to others, of course, like you mentioned, we stand to gain as women in all spheres of our lives. And for me specifically, it started when I was quite young in my career 15 years ago. I had just come, and this is a personal story, I had just come from Dadaab. I was working in Dadaab, and of course in Dadaab, the kind of skill sets you require in Dadaab are very different from the kind of skill sets you would require if you're working in a bank, because I was transitioning into a bank. However, when I got there, I felt inadequate as a human being and also as an employee within that organization. However, very quickly I got a mentor, someone who truly believed in my capabilities, and because of that belief, that's why I'm here today. So that is what has actually lit my fire around giving back to others.
Gwen, let's hear your experience, and perhaps even as you look back, would you say open, and how are you giving?
I always, so on every International Women's Day, I do this thing. I call the people who invited me to the table, and they're men, right? So I think for me, even as we think about the theme of Give to Gain, what it represents for me is it's not about your individual contribution. It's about sparking excellence in others, believing in them even when they don't believe in themselves. And as an insurer, for me, it is about ensuring that from a visionary perspective, we are building protection as a gift. Because when we give protection to families and to the
Jane, let's hear from you experience, and what does the theme Give to Gain speak to you?
Two things. So firstly, the order, that is, you give to gain. It's everyone would want to gain, scope it, then give. So the order is really peculiar in a way because it means you will invest first, put in time, then expect to get a return. So give to gain in that regard. Put in first, and then expect a return. So that order kind of means a lot to me. From experience, I've been privileged to have a lot of people who've firstly taken a risk on me, yeah, and then investing to make sure that what they saw truly sparks, just like Gwen had said. So there's someone who kept funding the calls, get me to where I am. So when you say impact on my means how to someone else in them, make sure they then see them.
All right. Practice, Jane, before you put the microphone, we started by saying that data shows that women in Africa are starting businesses faster than anywhere else in the world. But data from the International Finance Corporation also shows that globally, there's about a $42 billion gap in financing, right? And that's specifically for women-owned businesses. As someone from the financial ecosystem, what are the real barriers that women face when seeking funding for businesses? And why are women starting businesses but not able to scale them up, successful ventures?
So two things, actually multiple. The one thing is that it's not that the businesses that women start are not viable. We all have amazing business plans. And indeed, the other barrier then is the structure laid down in mind. And why do I say that? It had collateral requirements, and history had it that women would not own anything. Yeah, the other thing is that you needed to have been aggressive while women had multiple other things to do. Then another barrier that I have seen is access to markets. So a woman would have an amazing, fantastic solution, but they don't know where to sell it. And the other thing is that they don't have technology or training to allow them scale up their business. So one of the things that we then seek to do as financial institutions, and in this case, EcoBank, is to deliberately put focus on the woman business, train them, give them access to market, give them soft skills, or if you like, both including technological experience so they can access markets, and by all means, in the end, access capital.
Masi, I'd like to hear from you because you're from the, essentially from the financial system as well, representing NCBA. SMEs contribute over 30% to Kenya's GDP, employing over 80% really of Kenya's workforce or employed workforce. But access to finance still remains a barrier. What do you think needs to change in banking so women entrepreneurs are able to not just start businesses but scale their businesses?
So, Michelle, thank you for that question. For me, I believe, especially for women, is creating businesses which are sustainable, first and foremost. Creating businesses which are sustainable from the onset, how you actually set up your company will make all the difference. Do you have all the necessary documentation even as you start off? So that then again, as you're coming for financing in an organization like NCBA, which has a wide portfolio in terms of what we can offer for you, then it's very easy for you to actually get that financing. The other thing, and I think she's talked about access to market, women also need to believe in their own businesses. Believe in your own businesses, collaborate, learn from others, learn fast as much as you can, and also do not be afraid. The cake is big for everyone, so do not be afraid to actually share ideas and knowledge as you move along.
It's a bigger conversation we need to have on not being afraid, because women do that a lot, especially in the corporate world, right? Am I good enough to ask for a raise? Am I good enough to ask for a better title? Am I good enough? And so it's a conversation we definitely need to have. But Gwen, outside of starting businesses, scaling up, and eventually creating wealth, one big thing is protecting that wealth and perhaps passing it on to the next generation. Across Africa, less than 5% of people have adequate insurance coverage. When you come to Kenya, the number is perhaps even much worse. Why is financial protection in Kenya key to long-term economic empowerment, and especially for women entrepreneurs?
So at Prudential, we've noticed an interesting, and maybe I should call it a beautiful pattern, where when you talk to women and you're selling insurance to women, a woman's net worth for her isn't about her bank balance. It's about when her children will graduate. It's about comfort for her parents. It's about her siblings and her siblings' kids who need support. And then also there's a World Bank data that tells us that women reinvest 90% of their income into their families, compared to 30-40% for men. And the men in the room will upgrade you to the 90%. That was supposed to be funny. But there's embedded in that is the acknowledgement that life comes with different seasons. There are seasons of abundance, and then there's challenging seasons. During seasons of abundance, great things are happening. You're getting a promotion, you're expanding your business, things are going well. And during seasons of challenge, you have sickness, unexpected loss, disability, etc. So the reason why the protection conversation is an important conversation is because the data shows us that in developing economies, a tragedy, a sickness, and unexpected loss can take back a family back 2 generations. So protection from where I sit is about making sure that a temporary challenge or bad life situation doesn't make it a permanent one for your loved ones. So protection is about ensuring that you're able to take care. Actually, the way I look at it is, when we are building our assets, we look at investments like a harvest, right? So you focus a lot on the sowing and the harvesting and the reaping. But then what happens when the rain doesn't come? And that's why insurance is important. Insurance is that roof that covers and protects your dreams, right? So it's about making sure that even as we grow our assets, as we grow our incomes, we are also being very intentional about protecting them so that a bad situation doesn't take us back to poverty.
What would you say, though, needs to change so that people can, and especially women, can view insurance as a strategic investment and not necessarily as an everyday or monthly expense?
So first and foremost, I would say that insurance is not an investment. Insurance is a financial pillar that should not replace your investments, but should protect them. It should be like the watchman at your house. You've built a house in Runda, or you've built a house wherever, but you don't have security. So insurance is not an investment, but it should be the security that protects you from loss. So to the question that you're asking, I think I read data that said that 60% of women depend on go to SACCOs to be able to borrow and to be able to enhance their financial situation. And the reason why that happens is because the SACCO movement creates a community of trust for women to borrow from. So from an insurance perspective, I think the conversation is about making sure that women understand that if you can trust God, I think it's important that we are able to empower ourselves with the right knowledge so that you are just not taking care of two pillars of wealth, which is assets, asset growth and income growth, but also protecting yourself. So a lot needs to be done from our space. As insurers, I think we have a lot of work to do around simplifying so that insurance is more easily not just accessible, but also understood. And also that for us at Prudential, what we are trying to do in this market is to position ourselves as a legacy partner. So not as a product, but as a legacy partner, so that for women, we are telling them that if you are secure, if you are protected, then your family is as well.
Right. Judy, even as you speak about, financial empowerment for women, finance is increasingly becoming digital now. And there's been concerns of how inclusive digital financial technologies are today. How can technology close the gender gap specifically in financial access?
So, you said there's a lot of digitization in finance. And what I would point out to is Kenya, we are one of the most digitized economies because of M-Pesa. And because of that, what we've seen is a mama mboga is able to borrow money in the morning, and by evening, borrow money, is able to buy goods, is able to sell during the day, and by evening they've made profit and they're able to repay their loan. So that micro loans is really helping. But there are three other things I would look at. One is women entrepreneurs. At Network, we are able to help them expand their markets so that they're able to get more customers beyond just Kenya. Because of digitization, we set up our website, and you're able to sell beyond the borders of Kenya. So if it's a curious seller, today they sell only at Masai Market physical location, then through digitization, which we enable, then they're able to open a website and they have access to, it's borderless, customers from the US, from wherever. The second thing is innovation. The products, what products are we innovating, and are they inclusive? Do they have women in mind? My panelist here just mentioned how the banking system was built without the woman in mind. Are we building products, digital products today, with a woman in mind? Are they inclusive? So that's the second thing that we can look at, is ensuring that whatever digital products and they are inclusive now, because women have a seat on that table when the product is being innovated. The third thing I'll talk about is in terms of policy and governance. As leaders, are we building policy and governance around digitization that is also inclusive? Or are the governance or the laws or whatever it is that we're putting in place in terms of policy, is it inclusive of women? Are we looking at women businesses? Are we looking at even women professionals? When you're starting a business, if you look at most startup businesses today, they're not registered. It's something that we struggle. So when we're onboarding SME, you ask them for a C12, which is a registration document. They don't have it. And why is that? Because of the barriers that it involves to go get it. So it's about educating businesses. You need to set these up before your business scales, before you become too big for your processes. So it's around how do you educate, how do you work with this SME owner to ensure that as they are scaling their business, their processes are along with them, and not that their processes catch up with the business, because it can be very, very expensive when you scale bigger than your processes. So for us, digitization plays that role. And of course, with AI now coming in place, it's around making sure that, because AI relies on data, is that data inclusive as well? Or is it biased? Because AI is based on what existing data, and if the data existing is biased, then AI will also be biased. How are we making sure that that AI data is not biased and it's inclusive of communities, of women, of different genders as well? Yeah, so that's how to look at it.
All right, and so inclusivity is an important issue in the designing of these systems. But Mercy, let's come to you, because essentially you have the T when it comes to how senior leaders should then open the doors for growth for the next generation of women leaders coming after them, right? So in your view, what role did mentorship and sponsorship play in your career program? And how do you think senior leaders are able to then create an ecosystem where those working under them don't just come and do their 8 to 5, but also have an opportunity to grow, from, the financial, systems that we have, any other issues or, responsibilities that women can take advantage of? How do senior leaders get to do that?
Okay, so thank you for that. So today we say that careers are built based on competence. And of course, if careers are based on competence, being able to accelerate and build your career means that you need to have something extra apart from just competence. It means that you have to have the right networks. It means that you have to have the right connections within the organization, being able to lead with influence. And those things will not come when you're just doing your 8 to 5 job. Those things will only come if you're able to get the right mentor for that particular season that you're currently in. So for me, when we talk about leadership and of course being able to provide a lot of advocacy opportunities for women, I see it as an opportunity for leaders to actually reach down more to people, and especially the women. Because remember today when we talk about the conversation around women and mentorship, not all of us are confident enough to actually reach out for a mentorship opportunity. It's very hard for you, Michelle, especially if you're starting out, to go and tell someone, I'd like you to be my mentor. You will look and admire from afar. However, for us as women leaders, we are called upon to actually identify that potential and actually do the reaching out. Be the one who volunteers to become a mentor to someone who you've already identified potential in. And it's the only way that we can be able to build visibility for people who would else be missed within an organizational structure. So mentorship, advocacy, creating visibility for women at the workplace, those are the key things that we really need to focus on to drive empowerment among our women in that space. Yeah.
What would you say would be the right skill set or mindset for a young woman who wants to be part of the next generation of women leaders?
So, first of all, in terms of mindset, they need to be very curious. Curious in that they are continually learning. And then, of course, you want people who are courageous, that they can actually put their hand up to take up an extra assignment, an additional assignment here. And people who can actually challenge status quo, because then again, the world of work where we are working, we do not want people who are conventional. We want people who will come and question, why do you do things the way you do things? And it's in that question able to say that we are going to reinvent our processes, our structures, our policies. And of course, the final thing is they need to be visible. So you're doing all this work. Who knows what you're doing? Who knows what you're doing? So we need to also create structures for these women to be visible. For example, and this is a challenge to us as women, if there's a high delegation meeting in your organization, you can't be the only one who attends that meeting. Who else in your team is demonstrating the potential to actually step in those shoes? Please, let's carry those people along with us. There's a quote I read somewhere, and it says, the glass ceiling is not always brought up by men. It's carefully maintained by the women in those big corner offices. So I think for us as women, we need to actually find our space and our inch in opening those doors for other women.
I think Mercy keeps mentioning the things that we really need to take advantage of as women, the confidence confidence to ask for what you believe you're worth, right? And most importantly, just being able to believe in yourself. Gwen, let me come to you, because all of you here today have managed to build successful careers in quote-unquote male-dominated spaces. Gwen, for you, what leadership lessons helped you navigate these spaces and build influence? Because you walk into a boardroom and there's a room full of men in black and blue suits, and there you are in your pink little dress, and you don't look very serious all of a sudden. What helped you build that kind of influence?
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And perhaps the way to answer that question is to start with I think the question that Mercy answered so well. And I'd add to her list and say resilience. That as you're thinking about the skill set, AI can disrupt all sorts of things. And the future of work, none of us in this room can foresee what it's going to look like. But I think it's super important, especially for the young ones in this room, to be very open-minded, to realize that they're going to have very different jobs, and they will probably do several jobs at the same time. But what will make you stand the test of time is your resilience, your ability to take a no, and it does not affect your confidence. And so to answer your question, I would say that when I have entered rooms where everybody is in a straitjacket, have I been tempted to behave like a man? Luckily not. I remember one time when I worked in a bank, and I think the room was full of men, and I had a colleague who would start his reporting by saying, the team put up a gallant fight, they did very well, blah, 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 and then it's an underperformance. And I would be in awe that he would be so boisterous about such bad results. And I think for me, what I took away from that is, I think Gen Z call it Raha Jipe, right? So I wouldn't call it Raha Jipe, I would say confidence Jipe, right? You've got to fund yourself. You've got to give yourself that confidence that there will be days when you're successful as a leader, and there'll be days when you're losing. But you've got to save face. You've got to keep encouraging yourself, because other people are looking up to you. And so that ability to be able to consistently encourage yourself is important. I also think that on the path here, the points you made, Mercy, were really, really important. That when you go into rooms where you don't understand what's going on, it's important to listen. It's important to ask the right questions. So the ability to ask the right questions and the ability to connect with your area of strength as opposed to focusing on your area of weakness, I think is important. The importance of being able to find allies. And I think I'll stop with this one, managing upwards. You've got to learn to manage upwards. Bad bosses are many. There are very many. But you've got to know that they're human as well, and they're figuring it out as they go. But your job is to manage upwards well.
I think that's very good advice, Jane. Just picking up from that, because when I hear Mercy speak as well, she's basically telling us you need to move with audacity. You need to be heard. You need to be visible. You need to ask for what you want. What helped you build influence in a male-dominated space?
For me, I would say grit and grace, and with results. So you have to, beyond just reinventing yourself, the stay power, because with everybody else competing for the pie, gender is not the card you bring to the table. Results speak, or they do. So whether my slides have a lot more pictures than yours, let's go to the balance sheet, let's go to the P&L, I made impact, give me room. So that grit of staying in there no matter what. The other thing is that don't forget what you know. Yes, you may need to unlearn, relearn, and repackage, but if this works somewhere else, just repackage it. It always works. There's the diligence of staying in. It always pays off. So the principles of success don't change. I, however, would say the grace of having good mentors, sponsors, friendters, so they are your friends and they are your mentors at the same time, and in many cases, coaches. A coach doesn't have this emotional thing and is not impressed by you really. So you need those as well. Those people who don't, so you're so good, yeah, whatever. This is what we need to work on. So I've been privileged to have those 3 classes, actually 4. So frienders, coaches, mentors, and sponsors. So those have helped me come up.
All right, and I think that's all very good advice. I don't know who from the room is listening, but how many women here have walked into a room where they felt they had to prove themselves more than twice than everybody else in the room? Just by a show of hands. How many? You had to prove yourself more than anyone else. How many men here have felt that they needed to prove themselves twice as much in a room that they walked into? Not a single hand, guys. So this is why conversations like this matter, because when you normalize women leadership, it stops being so extraordinary, right? And so it is, expected of everybody else. But before we wind this conversation up, let's also open up the conversation to the audience. If you have a question to any of our panelists there tonight, and like I mentioned, all of them sit at the very center of Kenya's financial ecosystem, please put up your hand. We'll be able to take as many questions as possible in the spirit of inclusivity, so we don't leave anyone out. So let's make it brief. You say your name, your question, and we'll take one question at a time so the panelists can also keep up. Do we have any questions? If we don't, to be asked. Okay, and so, Judy, let me perhaps come to you as we begin our final conversation. There's a quote by Madeleine Albright that says that there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. Now look, it's a bit dramatic, right? But leadership isn't just about personal success, and that's why the conversation Give to Gain is happening. Who opened the door for you? And even as we have this conversation, how intentional are you about opening the door for others? And how should we all be intentional about opening the door for others?
Thank you. Thank you for that shocking quote. Indeed, as women, and I like the previous question about grit and having to be resilient to get up there. But what the women behind, after you see, they just see your success. They don't see the grit. They don't see how hard you had to fight to get where you are. They don't see that. They just see the glamour. They're like, wow, you're in this role. You're this big person. You drive this big car. That they don't know the story. So I think it's around telling our story more, being vulnerable and telling guys, this is where I started. I usually tell the ladies in our company how I started as an intern, running around in IT support. And they're like, really? Yeah, we start from somewhere, all of us, and we rise up. So it's around being vulnerable and telling our real stories and not the glamour of the career, because it's tough. And I'm sure everybody in this panel can tell you they faced some tough times. There have been times I've been in a room full of men, and they just kind of drift off into a game of golf that they all attended, and you are not there, and you're in a meeting. So the discussion goes off for almost 5-10 minutes, and you have to go like, guys, we were in a meeting. And sometimes some decisions that impact the staff are made outside the boardroom, and you're not there as a woman. So it's around how do you then circle back that conversation and create impact and show the mentees how this is done. So I think it's around giving them visibility in roles, giving them projects, working with them. So like, I'm here today, have I brought anyone with me? I think somebody asked. Yes, I have a whole table of women I work with there. So I make sure that there's visibility. And even when I'm struggling, I let them see me struggling. I tell them, yeah, this is hard. This is how the process I go through. See how it is. So it's around being vulnerable and telling our story.
Mercy, as a talent manager, we really can't run away from this perception that female bosses are bad news. right? And it's a perception in perhaps every workforce. What leads to this perception? How do we change this perception? And when a woman comes to you and says, I want to lead, I want to succeed, I want to make an impact, what do you say to them?
First, I'll answer that question with the last question, the last part. I want to succeed, I want to lead. Development, we say, is employee-owned and leader-led. So you have the answers and the cards in your hands to actually be able to develop yourself and to be able to grow as an employee or even in any other sphere that you might actually choose to grow in. Now, whether women bosses are worse than the male counterparts, I'll leave it to the audience. However, what I know, and the age-old myth that goes around, is that women, we are our own worst enemies. Is that true? Is that true? No one seems to have an answer. And I'll tell you, what we need to do more as women is collaborate, create enabling environments in the organization that will actually support other women to grow. And I'll give you an example. So today, a woman is expecting, they're in your team. You joined the workforce 25 years ago. You went through a very difficult time in terms of bringing up kids, having to take on maternity leave, and maybe returning to a place where you had a lesser job. Why would you want to extend the same pain to people in this day and age? I think we're in the age of information, and in the age of information, let's try to use that to build structures and processes within the organizations that we serve that will create more enabling and inclusive environments. How are you advocating for others? Because those are the things that basically women look out for. Remember, we are emotional beings. Women are more emotional. I don't think this person likes me. Yeah? I don't think they hear me. I don't feel like I belong here. These are all perceptions. So how do you demystify these perceptions? It's by creating structures that will support women to thrive at the workplace. So today, if you realize, yes, I have women in my team, at some point, because they are young, they will definitely leave for maternity leave. My work is to make sure that then again, I have good structures that support me to drive business continuity forward, so that then again, I'm not stretched as a leader and really depressed thinking, where will I get this capacity to be able to close on maybe departmental deliverables that you have. So I think as women, it's all about rallying behind each other, creating spaces where we can all thrive and drive the conversation around we want more women at the workplace. And of course, the conversation about women should not disadvantage men. So it's a double-edged sword. Yeah.
Very, very interesting insights, Mercy. Gwen, even as we begin to wind up, very briefly, what piece of advice would you give a young woman who is preparing to be among the next generation of women leaders?
Create structures. Create a structure where, I like to give this example that when I got this job and I was talking to a friend of mine, and he asked me, when you have to go to your kid's school for an event, where do you put that? So I said, in my Google Calendar. And then he asked me, when you have a meeting with your boss or a client, where do you put that? And I said, in my Outlook. And he asked me, are you two people?